office.
That's an old ploy, isn't it? That's nothing new. They've been doing that for decades.
That's nothing new, but now it has gone on steroids.
What do you say to those people who just get on there and then you never see a sign from them, never see a commercial, and they want to act like, hop on people's Facebook page and act like they've got some power or they're making some moves? What do you call those perpetrators?
Doppelgangers.
What'd you call them?
Doppelgangers.
Doppelgangers. What is that?
Doppelgangers.
Yeah, I know how to spell it. DOBBLEGAMERS.
No, DOPPLEGANGERS.
Oh, And what define that for us, Richard?
It's like a ghost.
Oh.
They're just an image that comes, that image in the machine.
Wow.
So then you have those, and then you have some out there whose ideas are so far off the charts, I wouldn't even vote for them to pick up my trash. That's what scares me.
Wow.
And we as citizens deserve better, because all of this leads into a question that I was going to wait until later on in the show or tomorrow morning to ask, but I might as well ask it now that I have people to start thinking about it. Is this city broken beyond repair?
So, Richard, I've been arguing this for several months now, and I may even have documentation of this even last year. I'd say that we've always been a broken city. It's never been a time that I can think of. And again, as I research and I go back, one particular year and go back another year and go back another century, I don't see any time technically within this city where folks of color have had, the pursuit of life, happiness, and all the other afforded things that are guaranteed to us by the Constitution.
That should come by. Well,
by
check
the Constitution.
This out. Richard, I think did your father work at Bethlehem Steel?
Yes, he did.
What was life like then? Was there a strong black middle class here then? Was it different?
Yes, there was.
And what was the level of...
See, I lived into where I lived at before I moved up into Ashburton, when my parents moved into Ashburton. I lived at 1657 West North Avenue, right up the street from Penn North. I could walk to the library at Pennsylvania and North Avenue. Tickner's Funeral Home was right across the street from there. Right across the street was the Reeds and the Old Met Theater. On the corner where the entrance to the subway is now, there used to be a good restaurant there called Wilson's. And right next to there was the Art Social Club. I could walk anywhere up and down the avenue with no fuss, no muss. You could see men every morning waiting to go to work at Bethlehem Steel.
What year was this?
Oh God, this was in the early '60s.
Okay. But see, like I said, when you take each period and you look at each period, there may have been that type of environment, but you also had your father probably worked at Bethlehem Steel, where he wasn't being paid an equal wage compared to his counterparts.
Well, you got to realize Bethlehem Steel paid decent union wages. U.S. Steel believe it or not, paid very good wages.
Right, but there was always a disparity between what white workers were making and what black workers were making.
Even with unions?
Even at Bethlehem Steel for many years. And not only did you have that, but you're also talking about the time where whites and blacks were very segregated. So you're right. So you're talking about we couldn't go to certain restaurants, we couldn't go to certain department stores.
If I didn't notice the disparity.
And your parents didn't mention it?
My parents never mentioned it.
Wow.
Now, I knew that there was a problem downtown with the stores downtown. There were 4 stores on the corner of Howard and Lexington you could not go into.
Right.
Hex, Holschel's, Stewart's, and Hutzler's.
And then around that time as well, you had, banking institutions that wouldn't lend in black communities.
No.
And that's what I was saying. So we've never had, we've always had to deal with one issue going into another issue. And then you start going into the 1970s, coming right after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King.
68.
Right. You have a city that's, imploded, that never recovered from that. And then you have, the onset of heroin within the community and a murder rate within 1971, 1972 of over 300.
In Baltimore?
In Baltimore, yeah. 1971 was a little bit over 300, and 1972 was 330 murders.
Wow.
But even though I never paid attention, I never listened to those numbers in those days,
Right.
because I could still walk the neighborhoods. I could walk from my house all the way up to Gwen Oak, even though you couldn't go into Gwen Oak for a long time when there was an amusement park up there. I could walk anywhere in the streets. I could sleep on my front porch if I wanted to, leave my front door open if I wanted to. There were certain things you paid attention to, and there were certain things you didn't pay attention to.
What I find interesting is your family moved into Ashburton, and your father worked at Bethlehem Steel.
My mother worked at Social Security. In fact,
So those are two high-paying jobs.
She moved out of the Packard-Pratt building when the main building on Security Boulevard opened.
And Richard, your parents, I'm pretty sure, made sure that your education was priority, correct?
Yes, they did.
Okay, and that's something else that I've talked about in my video, especially those that were in the working class back then. They didn't want their children to have the same lives as them. They didn't want them working as civil service workers or
blue
down
collar.
at the blue collar or working down at the plant. So in many cases, they emphasized in their next generation and their offspring a strong educational direction and purpose.
I remember as a kid, I went to one of the first all-black preschools in the city. It was called the Little School. And there was a guy by the name of, if I remember his name correct, his name was Mr. Travis. He used to pick me up in the station wagon every morning and take me to preschool and kindergarten.
Well, so then that sort of like that throws a little water on your concept that has never been a thriving black. I told y'all I went to see that on Broadway, the Broadway play Kiss Me Kate, that was from 1934. And in that play, they call Baltimore Mob Town.
Well, it's always been mob town. It's always been mob town. There have always been clans that have run Baltimore City.
And that's why I had a problem with. I mean, I appreciate many different immigrant groups within Baltimore City that settled here in the early 1900s that worked hard. But the lady the other night at the town hall seemed to forgot that there was an Italian mob here during the 1900s. And not everybody was this. She tried to make it seem like the Italian community was this hardworking, thriving community that never asked for anything, and they just picked themselves up by their bootstraps, and were able to create Little Italy and be able to create prosperity within the Italian community. That's not the case. The Jewish community, the Greek community, and the Italian community was very much responsible for bootlegging and running numbers and illegal lending and all kinds of other things, including in some cases a tariff or a tax paid out of businesses that went to these particular consortiums.
Well, I'll even give you one better. You may had a whole lot of the projects around Little Italy, and they were raising all sorts of terror.
Right.
They didn't raise that same terror inside of Little Italy.
Correct.
Because if the person who was found to be doing it suddenly, shall we say, disappeared.
Yeah.
Because they didn't play that. You didn't bother the families and the children and the wives, right?
That's correct.
That was the code.
And I remember coming down here during the summer. This was back in, because, I have family here. I remember coming here in the early, I'm going to say 80s, and being down at Flag Houses, which is right around the corner
From Little Italy.
From Little Italy. You know, if you went around the corner, and that Flatfoot being that police officer who most of the time was a white officer protecting Little Italy, he would chase you back on to your side of the street, back over there to flag houses. Yeah. And to the point where he was willing to use that nightstick to bop you upside your head to get you back on your block. So that's why I said, I don't, there's so many different elements. I know that in some cases we were kind of kept isolated from a lot of the things that went on. So like, it seems like, Richard, I'm not saying that you were sheltered, but it seems like you were definitely kept isolated from a lot of the other issues that were going on within the community.
Well, but Rich, he was in a circle or sort of an ecosystem,
right?
Where he went to the best schools,
an ecosystem.
And eco.
Right.
Y'all know what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about things working together towards the same good.
Right.
In religion, you know, to certain people.
Churches
were
a lot stronger.
Schools.
Right. But we had to, because again, we had to segregate. You know, we had no other choice. We were separated from the mainstream.
The blacks always also segregated themselves.
Yeah.
Am I right, Richard?
To a certain degree, yeah.
Right, but that's what, and that's why I say in some cases desegregation hurt us. Mm-hmm. Because when we had to be self-sufficient and weren't trying to drink out of the glass of, you know, the masters, we had to make sure that we had our own glass, it was clean, and we had fresh water.
Right.
So we were self-sufficient. Now we become very unself-sufficient in many cases because we want to be a part of the status quo and the establishment, which has not necessarily been beneficial to our communities.
You're absolutely right. But you know what? I've been in the music business a long time, and I noticed those people that get quickly rich, make a lot of money real quick, how they change.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same thing. You get freedom, and they hadn't been able to do stuff before, and you get a chance to do it. You don't think about how much it's going to cost if you got the money. You don't think about.
We classify them as bougie.
Well, that's what we classify them up, but it seems to be the way of the cross for a lot of people.
Right.
And I know, but not only for those kinds of people, but even for a lot of these young people who get money from the lead poisoning, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000, and spend it up in 2 and 3 weeks. You got the same thing.
Well, they say the Bible says it's not necessarily money itself that's the evil, it's the love of money.
The love of it, yeah. But the thing of it is, if you've been deprived, it ain't the love, it's you needed it. Now I got it, so look out.
Right.
You know,
it's a bad romance.
Well, but I really don't think that we really ever wanted segregation. I said that to you all a while back. I think we just wanted liberty. Right. We wanted the liberty to go and live where we want to, eat where we want to, ride where we want to, and that sort of thing. We really didn't want integration with them. They smell like dogs. Why would we want to hang out with them?
Lord,
don't get me started.
Lord, everybody, please reach your hands out to Patrick this afternoon.
The radio.
Touch your radio.
If you're hanging out with some of them, you want to hope it don't rain, because you're gonna be trying to go, what is that smell?
Oh Lord, Lord,
don't get me started.
Stretch your hands out, family.
Yeah, y'all pray for me, but I'm telling you, I'm tired of this. I'm afraid. And Richard, you really got me sort of going the other day when you were talking about, do we want to be here where there are no police? That really was a hairball in my crawl. We cannot expect for the people of Baltimore to respect these policemen. And you say, well, they're not all bad. Well, that might be true, but then the ones that are bad make it bad for the other ones. Then the good ones protect and hide the bad ones. Right. So what are we supposed to do here?
But Patrick, knowing the history of the police and how it was formed, when you look at go watch Gangs of New York with Leonardo DiCaprio, and how they show how the fire department was the Irish, the police department was the Italians, and how a lot of these organizations.
You got it reversed, but yeah, go ahead.
Right, it might be reversed.
I'm sorry. Irish were the police.
Irish were the police. Yeah. Right. I'm sorry, reversed. But and how technically these organizations were designed to watch over white people's property.
Yeah.
And keep the immigrants and folks of color under control. Keep them under wraps.
Well, you know, the Irish were.
What did we do as far as policing our communities then?
Well, you just wouldn't.
Our
You wouldn't
communities,
even-
not theirs.
I know what we would
'Cause the
do. Is you
police
better
were for
not do
them.
something. If somebody see you see in my community, somebody see somebody you doing something up the street, they'd call your mama and tell you, your son is up here doing so and so, and when you got home, mama was waiting.
Right.
What are you doing? And then sometimes the neighbor would snatch you up themselves
Right.
and say, "What are you doing?"
Right. How did it?
Unfortunately, Patrick, these days, you do that now, then somebody's going to say, "Who are you?
Right.
Who do you think you are touching my child?"
Oh man, they do it at school.
But
The
Patrick, you
kids
came
always right.
from a sharecropper's family, which in Texas was a very separated community outside of the white community.
Oh, absolutely. The
So
black
what?
community,
So
sure.
what would, if there was a dispute, if there was an issue that required some action that was almost criminal in some cases, man beating his wife, somebody stole something from a black store or from even another black farmer.
Shame. It was always shame that was put on.
Right. So there was kind of a community rule
Yes.
that kind of enforced
Yes. Kept
the community's
yes.
security,
mores,
right,
exactly.
and moralities, right.
And then the Lord, the girl did not get pregnant. She disappear.
Right.
She would disappear. And
So-
all of a sudden, they got a new cousin that's staying
Right,
at the
right.
house with the family. The girl, they done sent her down home, and she sent the baby back so everybody can get used to that. Then eventually, she would go back, come back.
But that's the question that I think that I'm leading to is do we go back to a self-policed community rule where in some cases it may have a little bit more forceful action because nowadays, people just don't want to act right. So do we get to the point now where, we collectively come together and we enforce the rules?
We
Remember I was
have
telling you
to.
about clearing the corners. If the police can't clear the corners, I bet you 100 black men can clear that corner.
if they go and meet them and then get them involved in something else. Just
Of
their
course.
presence won't do it.
No, not just the presence,
right,
but it's like you come with us, young man.
yeah, right. We're gonna show you how to get out.
How
this
many
corner.
times do we watch the dope fiend not out in our community every day, driving past,
Right.
watching them looking like they're sitting in an invisible chair,
Right.
and then the community does nothing absolutely about it. But yet they become an impact to the community because they're constantly being picked up for an ambulance, getting services,
Or robbing somebody,
or
or-
robbing, right, breaking into someone's home to feed their addiction. So at what point do we as the community say enough is enough? We're going to pull him off of the street and get him treatment. There's not a choice here. Because if we allow him with the choice, he continues to sit there and nod out.
Right, but it's going to take a whole a collective that is just not bent up on punishing these people. I said to Richard the other day, I said there has to be a registry of all the children that have led, especially those that have been paid by the city. Every time a cop stops somebody, they should look on there to see if that kid's name is on there. So then they realize that kid is not just being bad, he is sick.
Right.
Until we start looking at it from an empathetic way, I don't think anything is going to happen because we're going to be saying, no, you're not finna arrest everybody. And they'll go say you all a bunch of animals and not care about that these kids are sick. This is sickness. This is not normal what these kids are doing.
But I know we talk about lead all the time, but I still feel that, and me and Dwayne talk about this, that there's a possibility for treatment. The problem is we don't treat. We identify, and that's it. We pay out, and we give. We pay out for damages for the lead, but we never treat. And we feel that there may be a treatment, but we've never really researched it to see that the brain has a strong plasticity to it.
Yeah, it does.
Which means it has the ability to adapt when there are damage or neurological or cognitive issues.
But lead is degenerative.
It is.
It eats the brain.
It is. But I still feel that there may be a possibility of working with these children.
I do too, Jim.
But we're not working with them. We're not
That's what
getting
I'm
them help.
saying.
Not even in a jail.
They don't even bring it up.
Yeah.
They don't bring it up, and that's the part that pisses me off. Is that they don't even bring it up. And like I said, they got a list. They know all these kids. Most of them tried to get money, so they know
their
who
families
they are.
as soon as.
So why don't they cross records and look to see, oh, this kid has lead. Okay, let's not take him to jail. Let's take him to this center where we can try to help him.
Right.
Try to reason with him. Not that I think there is any reasoning that they can do other than the child. They probably have to give them drugs to keep them.
It's going to be a lot harder, but remember, lead causes a learning disability. And even with things like, folks that have, what is it when they read the numbers backwards? Dyslexia. There's a way to teach them.
Yes.
Even with with children that have autism, there is a way to teach them.
Sir.
You may not get them to,
the degree of normality, but
correct.
they can function as human beings.
And there may be a way to address and deal with these young men and women, but we don't address them and we don't look for a solution for them. Instead, we round them up, we classify them as repeat violent offenders, and we throw them away in the prison system and take them and remove them out of society.
And then let them out after a few years, and they're hardened, they're hardened than they were when they went in.
And then the only time that they become docile or not really a threat to the community is when we keep them in there until they're 60 and 70 years old.
Or we keep them on some form of medication to keep them, what they used to call it saltpeter in the military, something to medicate them. What do you think, Richard?
Well, this is a problem. This is a nightmare that has been coming faster and faster and faster, and it's now getting to a point it's a perfect storm.
Yeah.
I don't know why they call them a perfect storm. That's an imperfect storm. Shoot. So all that stuff coming, man, that's a tornado, a cyclone, a hurricane, all mixed together, man. That's catastrophe.
And this is where we're headed to.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. I think we've always been headed there.
I think it's the way that the course they've set for us. I don't think
correct.
Well, that's part of what I've been saying is that a lot of this has been done by design.
Correct.
A lot of it or all of it?
I would say at least 80 to 90% of it.
Yeah.
And there has been folks that have been able to break those cycles. There are some folks that see these cycles and say, okay, well, I'm not going to allow my child not to have an education. He's going to be the first one to go to college. I'm not going to not be a homeowner. We're going to be a homeowner. Whereas they've never had a generation, they've always been renters. There's folks that I'm going to increase my wealth. I'm going to change the direction or the dynamics.
Or quote unquote do the right thing.
Right. And there was a preacher at my church today, and I guess they're looking for people for the census, to do the census, and something like $500 if you pass the test. And she said, the number one problem is?
They can't read.
That she didn't even mention that when she said their lack of courtesy. They're snappy. They don't know how to say good morning.
You see, courtesy,
they're not friendly.
Civility is no longer,
no class.
Civility is no longer a good thing anymore.
What?
I don't even think it's that so much. I still put it back to
a lot of parents do not teach civility.
Yeah. That don't mean it's not a good thing.
But it's not like they don't learn it, because they learn it sometimes in school.
It's a choice not to do it.
Right. Yeah. But I think that still comes back to that prefrontal cortex. And when you don't develop your mind, you don't know how to rationally think. Being courteous also comes out of the prefrontal cortex. Having empathy comes out of the prefrontal cortex. There are a lot of emotions that are displayed that come out of that prefrontal cortex. So if you're not developing your mind and you're not reading, you don't know about grace and poise, and mannerism and respect for others, because you haven't developed rational thinking.
And not only that, and like I said, some of it has to be taught to you as well.
Correct.
Going in.
Correct.
And in many households, civility is not taught because the parents are uncivil toward each other.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And each other and family members and stuff.
Yeah.
And my mother was talking about somebody said, she said, get out of here, boy. Go on. See, this grown folk talk.
Right.
You know, we don't do that anymore. Did y'all see that little girl on I think she's 2 years old? A little boy asked her to get married. She said, "What did she say she did? She put a chokehold on her, and she said it's just the best thing, Mom." And the mom said, "You shouldn't be putting chokeholds on little boys." She said, "Little children shouldn't be talking about getting married."
Right.
You know what I mean? So these children are coming up with this, so if they have no direction, I understand what you all are saying.
But there's a lot of children that are in adult situations. I mean, you have a high rate in Baltimore City of teenage pregnancies.
They only repeat what they see.
Correct.
Yes, listen, you all. This is a wonderful conversation. Tomorrow we're going to carry on and know what your thoughts are. You've been listening to Patrick Henderson's Meet the People on Spirit 1400.
And again, our hearts and our prayers go out to the Bryant family.
To the Kobe Bryant family.
When I zoomed in, clued in, I didn't even know this had happened.
Yeah, so I know you're
And
in shock.
I think we also are learning that his daughter was killed in the crash, and Rick Fox may have been. Rick Fox is okay? Okay, so it's been confirmed Rick Fox is good then. So
Rick Fox is good? Okay.
Yeah, okay, he's okay.
Oh, that's good.
But his daughter, his daughter was in there?
His daughter was in there, so our
man.
hearts and our prayers go out to. And I think that's the one that played basketball. Yeah, that's the one that played basketball.
His girl.
So, yeah.
Daddy's little
I think
girl.
it's oldest one, right? Yeah, his oldest daughter.
All right, y'all. We're running on grace by this time. Thank you, Dwayne, for your grace and mercy. Again, you've been listening to Patrick Henderson. We'll see and hear you tomorrow at 11:30. And the gentleman that sent me the letter from Whiteside, Maryland, thank you so much. A beautiful letter. Someone says he listens all the time. We're going to be talking about education again on tomorrow at 11:30 on WLB 1010. God bless y'all. Have a blessed balance of the day.
WWIN Baltimore, WWIN HD Baltimore. On the web at spirit1400.com. Spirit 1400, the spirit of today's gospel. The spirit of today's gospel.